We now call this meeting to order. It's still 6:03 p.m. Please give attention to this short video. Over to you, Emily.
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you, Emily. Let's conduct the roll.
Member Ash?
Here.
Member Erickson?
Present.
Member Esquivel?
Here.
Member S.L. Sego?
Here.
Member James?
Here.
Member Miller?
Here.
Member Patel?
Here.
Member Saunders?
Here.
Member Shakarian?
Here.
Vice Chair Lovejoy?
Present.
Chair Carr?
Present.
All right, we do have a quorum with members Ajir, Banker, Chahal, Stark, Torf, and Wayne absent. I'd also like to note that Member Esquivel is attending in person, as it was noted as remote location on the agenda.
With bells on. And thanks, Member Shakarian, for setting the pace with joining remotely. Extra step there, so thank you for that. And I do note we have a new member, Tandra Erickson. Would you like to give us a brief introduction?
Hi, I'm a resident of Orinda, an active bicyclist and transit supporter. I'm also a special education teacher with about over 20 years of experience.
Welcome. We normally don't bite. Well, should have kept the mic on. Next on the agenda is public comment. Emily, have we received any written public comment?
We do not have any public comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak during public comment on an item that is not part of the agenda? Is there anyone joining remotely?
There are no online public comments.
Okay, very good. So the next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, which includes the summary of actions from our meeting of January 22nd and acknowledgement of the member attendance log.
So moved.
Are there any changes or comments from the committee?
I don't
Member
have
Ash
any
has
changes.
none. I'm seeing none. Emily, have we received any written public comments regarding any changes?
Was there a second to the motion?
No, he told me I was premature.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss it before we.
We will acknowledge his motion when we get there. No one from the public?
No.
Chair Ash jumped in with a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Emily, please conduct a roll call vote.
Member Ash?
Aye.
Member Erickson?
Aye.
Member Esquivel?
Yes.
Member S.L. Sego?
Aye.
Member James?
Aye.
Member Miller?
Aye.
Member Patel? Member Saunders?
Yes.
Member Shakarian?
Aye.
Member Stark?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lovejoy?
Aye.
Chair Carr?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes unanimously with Member Patel abstaining and members Ajir, Bankert, Chahal, Torf, and Wayne absent.
Excellent. So next on our regular agenda items will be item 4B, which is an informational item to be introduced by Matt and presented by Lindy Johnson and Mark Watts. Hello, Lindy. So over to you, Matt, for the introduction.
Thank you, Chair Carr. I'll just do a brief introduction, just introducing the item because it was requested by committee members, I think in December, at the December meeting, or maybe last month, but we had a recent request for legislative update, and that's why I've got our Director of External Affairs here, Lindy Johnson.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you all for your interest in this and your invitation to come and speak with you. I'm going to do a bit of a plug, since I have the mic in front of me, that our countywide transportation survey ends or is closing at the end of this week. So I'm sure most of you have taken it, but this is my plug to ask you to also spread it. So if you know anyone or are part of any groups or Facebook groups or anything like that where you would be willing to post it and ask for folks' feedback, we would greatly appreciate that. It is available on our website, right on the homepage. If you go to our little planning area, it's right there. But we also have a whole web page dedicated to the CTP with a lot of information that we certainly can share out after this, just as a quick reminder, so it's easy to share. All right, thank you. Moving over to the government affairs side of my work, I want to quickly apologize. Mark Watts was unable to join us this evening, so I am going to provide an update, but I will say it might be a little bit less housing focused than he would have been able to provide. Most of my role here is tracking transportation related legislation. That being said, I'm happy to have Mark come to a future meeting if it would be helpful to hear a little bit more of his reflections on that. I can, however, share a lot of what we tracked last year and give you a bit of a preview of what we're looking at for this coming legislative session. So 2024, we saw a lot of bills introduced around transportation. A lot of them, as bills naturally do, died off, and many of them were actually vetoed, which is not always the case. So that was an interesting experience as we watched the kind of process go through. But I did have three I thought would be worth sharing with all of you. One is SB 960. This is a complete streets bill. It got a lot of attention because it actually required Caltrans to include complete street assets in their asset management plan, system highway management plan, and in the plain language performance reporting. So essentially, thank you. Essentially, this is just going to result in us seeing more complete streets plans and anything that Caltrans is in charge of and or managing. And so we thought this was an interesting bill. We supported it and talked a lot to our board about it as it went through the process. It was signed into law. The other bill that I thought might be of interest is about electric vehicle charging and the ability for counties to essentially ticket the lack of a charger's functionality. This bill is AB 2037, and it expanded the jurisdiction of county scalers to include publicly operated electric vehicles, so EV chargers, except chargers that are operated by local publicly owned electric utilities. So there's sort of a bit of a caveat there for anything that would have been operated, let's say, by PG&E. But it allows them to seize it essentially if it's on public property and not operational. So they can sort of come in and say, hey, we've offered this to our public, it's not functional and it's not working, and we can't get the person who's responsible for maintaining it to maintain it, so we can seize it as a piece of property and then hopefully work to make it operational, right? So it limits some scope, but in general, hopefully will give some flexibility to local jurisdictions, including those that you were here representing, to deal with these electric vehicle chargers should they become inoperable and they're not able to get someone to come out and fix it, which we have heard throughout the state has at times occurred. Though thankfully, a lot of folks have EV charging partners that are still good partners. The other bills I wanted to mention that we followed really closely related to autonomous vehicles. As you know, here at CCTA, we have a specific interest in that. The one that was signed that you've possibly heard the most about was AB AB 1777. It's a lot of sevens in that one. I'm not sure how to say it. Is it 1777? Is it 177? I'm not sure. But the bill insisted on two-way communication in autonomous vehicles. So now should a emergency vehicle pull over or come into contact with an autonomous vehicle, there's a two-way communication within that vehicle, or there will be. It also put into law some other regulations about autonomous vehicles and communication and data. It was the only bill of the bills that we monitored that was signed into law. There was also bills that had to do with drivers in the vehicle, particularly as related to long-haul truck driving, but that bill was vetoed. We do anticipate, in fact, we already know that there will likely be a return of a similar bill this year, though it seems to be reducing in scope. So we often call these driver-in bills, right? Bills that are really concentrated on requiring someone be in a driverless or autonomous vehicle, whether that's a shuttle, a long-haul truck driver, or car on the everyday road. All of those tend to fall into this kind of driver-in terminology. And for the most part, in California, those have focused on the long-haul truck driving. What we are hearing is that we may see this year a scaling back from just all trucks, and instead it concentrating more on vehicles that are used for direct delivery. So oftentimes, for example, a vehicle might leave FedEx right in your community and mostly drive around your community to drop off those FedEx packages, right? That might be more the target this year than the vehicle that might drive all the way down I-5, but to be determined. So anyway, those are some of the transportation bills we followed really closely in 2024. There was an array of bills that related to safety and transit, including one that had to do with a regional funding measure that was introduced by Senator Wiener. Some of you may have heard about that and the many conversations we and agencies like us and MTC were having with the legislator over that legislation. It's a lot of ledge in that. The bill did not move forward. The MTC and our local counties struggled to come to consensus with the legislators who were really kind of interested in an expenditure plan, and initially this was not introduced as a measure that would have an expenditure plan attached. So it didn't move forward. However, something has been reintroduced this year that we will again be monitoring with the same primary author being Senator Wiener, but we have yet to see the exact language that will take shape. It is currently what we tend to call a spot bill, right? A bill with very few sentences and a little bit of a hint of what it's going to be about, but not the full details yet in place. That being said, CCT has certainly been engaging a lot with MTC and other agencies as we start to think about what legislation around a regional measure might look like. So that's definitely something we'll be paying a lot of attention to this year. I think for the most part, that kind of quickly summarizes a lot of what we looked at in 2024 as it relates to transportation. I know there were a lot of bills that, as I said, related to housing that might still have a lot of interest to all of you, and there's a general focus on planning and planning infrastructure. So I'd be happy to come back and provide some of that. But I thought that instead of leaving you hanging, I'd give you a little bit of information about the bills that we concentrated closely on this year. I'm also happy to talk a little bit about what we're seeing introduced. I know I just gave you some preview of that, but before I do, I did just want to sort of open it up to questions about what we saw play out during 2024's legislative session.
Yeah, this is casual, so I'm not going to go around the dais. Just jump in if you're interested.
Thank you. Just very quickly, the bill about requiring driver and autonomous, and I totally understand. I remember the situation in San Francisco where there was a traffic jam or whatever, with all these vehicles, Waymo, I believe, backed up together. But it does seem like that would neuter the entire economic advantage of potentially having commercial autonomous driving vehicles. And I just wonder the kind of backlash, or I don't know, if there's been any kind of political, or not political, but public back cry against that.
Yeah, so I will say these bills, and we've seen a few different iterations of them. 2 years ago, it was SB 361. I'm going to have to look into that. And when the governor vetoed that, he also vetoed that, he wrote a pretty long veto letter explaining that he thought that it was important that California continue to be part of this work and this innovation, and really asking for there to be a lot of concentration on workforce development. Our state definitely took that to heart and had a lot of conversations around it. CCTA really took it to heart, and it is part of why we are starting the Gomentum Innovation Alliance and really concentrating a lot of effort here around workforce development. I'd be happy to come come back, Matt, at some point and talk specifically about the Momentum Innovation Alliance and CCTA's interest and passion for workforce. But certainly that veto letter was one of the things that kind of prompted some of that work with this call to action, that it's important we be talking about the workforce, both the current and the future workforce. And we certainly are looking forward and working on engaging in those conversations. The second veto letter, I feel like, was a little bit less in-depth. That being said, I think that there's been a pretty clear communication here that the governor is not interested in signing a bill of this exact nature, and that is why we are likely to see one come back this year that is a little bit more scaled back, exactly, and is concentrating maybe on something they see as more likely to be passable by the governor.
I did have a question. I'm Rosa from El Cerrito.
Hi.
First of all, welcome and thank you for being here. So glad you're here. So I was confused about the first bill. Was that a California bill for Caltrans? And
Yeah, so all of these, I should have said that, I apologize. So all of these bills are California bills. I came here mostly to provide a state update. That being said, would be happy to talk a little bit about the federal government. We tend to track state bills a little bit more closely. It's a very consistent and predictable process here in California. What's happening at the federal government isn't always quite so predictable, and so we don't track it in quite the same way. That being said, we do work with a wonderful team who helps keep us abreast of all of that. So all of these are California state bills that were introduced in the 2024 session. And SB would be Senate bill, so it was introduced on the Senate side of the House. An Assembly bill means that it was introduced in the Assembly side of the House.
regarding Caltrans assets,
Yes, so
be transparent, so Caltrans has to list all their assets to the counties? Or
no, I'm sorry. No, Caltrans has to include complete streets in all of the plans that they put forward. Maybe that's the easiest way to put it. I'm trying to simplify it. But essentially, as they put forward plans to do work and then therefore implement that work, they need to include complete streets.
That would be San Pablo Avenue in El Cerrito.
I believe so. That's my understanding, yeah.
They weren't doing that before?
My understanding is, I mean, there are projects where there are complete streets. I should clarify that. It's not to say that Caltrans had no, but this is a law requiring that all of their projects have complete streets in them.
Yeah, there's been a deputy directive on the books since, I think, 2009, a complete streets directive, but it's really, there's a lot of directives out there, and really integrating those directives into the entire Caltrans kind of design process is, I think, what this is about, and holding, holding them to it.
You mean, I'm sorry, I don't know what complete streets mean. I feel like, sometimes it makes me seem like we do have streets that go to nowhere, like you end up in dead-end streets.
Oh, you know what? This is actually wonderful to hear. And I don't know if Matt feels this way, but it's so great when someone's willing to say, like, hold on, can we back up a few steps? So thank you. I really appreciate that. Again, I mean, even thinking of starting like, oh, we're talking about California legislation would have been a great place to start. So that being said, I'm going to pivot to our wonderful and incredible planner, and maybe suggest that we do a whole thing about what complete streets are and the history of them and what they look like in Contra Costa County, because it is kind of a term now that I feel like we assume everyone is familiar with, but fairly so. I think I run into people in the public all the time who also have never even heard.
I have regular streets in Berkeley that are not streets anymore. So, yeah.
Do you want me to
Yeah.
get into a quick definition?
Yeah.
So it's, when they say complete streets, it's about completing it for all modes. So streets that aren't just focused on moving cars, that they are attempting to accommodate more multiple modes
Okay.
into the design process.
Thank you. Okay, good, that's good.
When you drive around here, if you sometimes see really green paint for a long period of time, oftentimes that's a complete street project.
Yep.
Okay.
Anytime you see space given to other modes, or,
Okay.
kind of safety applications to other.
Like San Pablo Avenue is not a complete street. Maybe, not?
No.
No, it's not?
No, it's got elements of complete streets and, the signalized crossings that have gone up, pedestrian crossings, but in terms of what's moving down the boulevard, it's really focused on cars.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I get one clarification on the complete streets for Caltrans? Because being a bicyclist, are there going to be better design requirements, do you know, under the law? Or is it just the law says that they actually have to do this now? Because say, for example, they might design a complete street and how Caltrans designs, anybody that rides a bike, I just like saying riding out of Pittsburgh to try to get onto the street there, that the Caltrans, I think, designed and built that supposed bike path, but the intersection isn't safe for anyone. So do you know if are they going to have more consistent, safe, complete streets as part of the legislation, or is it just making sure that they're at least now planning for it?
I'd have to go look very closely at the bill. I don't want to give you inaccurate information. I'm happy to send you both the bill analysis, and I'm happy to share my analysis in reading it. That being said, in my very immediate scan that I did as you were speaking, I'll be totally transparent. It does look like it's more about moving forward and ensuring that they do it in the planning of things, as opposed to going back and ensuring that all things are made into complete streets, which I will say is much more aligned with what the common move of the legislator would be. It would be quite costly for them to be required to go back and ensure every asset is a complete street.
Yeah, I think, well, so one, Caltrans, is required to follow NACDO guidelines, which is, National,
Traffic office?
something about traffic control. It's about putting
that for you.
devices in the roadway and anyway, it's national guidelines for those types of things. So they're supposed to be following those. But I think the example you gave where there's a nice bike path, but then it leads to an unsafe intersection, that's kind of how things were getting rolled out under the original deputy directive. Like the bike ped group at Caltrans is doing their job, designing the bike path, but then the group that's responsible for where the ramp hits the road, that intersection, is just saying, put a signal in and call it a day,
It's the National Association of City Transportation Officials.
Thank you.
I'll just throw in, because I looked it up, but according to a study by the University of California, Berkeley, 30% of non-Tesla fast charges in the 9-county Bay Area do not work on a regular basis. So 1 out of 5 times you go to charge your EV, you might not have it. So that just goes to the importance of where that other bill on EV charging and counties being able to take it over, cities taking them over, they got to be maintained.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Seeing no other questions, I did just want to quickly mention, so I believe right now we have about 37 bills that we're tracking fairly closely. There's about 175 we're tracking in a very general sense. The deadline to finalize essentially your bill introductions was just last week. So we're still reading through a lot of these. Many of them are still spot bills. There's a lot to materialize this year. That being said, we do see a few more bills coming forward that have to do with autonomous vehicles, bills that have to do with transit and transit access. A lot of bills we're going to be following that have to do with teleconferencing, actually, and are looking at governance and how public meetings can be held, the requirements of agencies like ours to conduct our public meetings. So we don't just follow transportation legislation. We're also very interested in special districts and things that impact our governance. We're also following a few bills that relate to surplus land and that have to do with contracting. So we're very interested in anything that sort of explores creative ways to build projects or do infrastructure projects as an agency that does that kind of thing. It's important for us to keep an eye on any legislation that relates to that. So those are really general areas where we're seeing some bills come through this year. In March, we will be bringing a list of kind of those first 37 we're monitoring to our Administration and Projects Committee and then eventually to our board. I also in March will be bringing our state and federal legislative platforms, which usually just sort of serve as a guide for us. So I'd be happy to share those with all of you once they're approved after our board meeting in March. Awesome. Well, thank you again for inviting me. It's really wonderful to be with all of you, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to do this. Really, it means a lot to have folks like all of you dedicated to transportation, caring about the work that CCTA does, and coming forward to kind of provide your input. Excuse me, that's probably the person who was supposed to present. Okay. But anyway, I just wanted to express my gratitude and thank you all for having me to come in tonight.
Lindy, I was hoping you could just provide a quick, very quick update on, this group was very interested in the I-680 Express Lane project and was very they gave a lot of input on that, and we're very happy to hear that we got the $166 million federal grant before the administration changed. Can you just let us know kind of where things sit with that grant and things in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were really excited, and we really, appreciate you sharing in that excitement. It was a really big deal, and it was really fun for my department to put together a lot of the communications around that. We got to work with Nancy Pelosi's office, which was really cool to do. So to their credit, the Department of Transportation and a lot of the folks in the federal government towards the end of last year worked very hard to get a template out to folks who had received funding like us, especially these really large funding packages. And that was really helpful in us getting an agreement forward and into the government fairly quickly. Unfortunately, that was around the middle of January, which was not exactly the easiest time to get something signed. Sometimes these agreements take up to a year, and we were working with about 3 weeks. So we knew that it was rough, but I really have to give it to staff. People really mobilized here, worked really hard, and to the credit of a lot of the people in Washington, D.C., they were very responsive and I think really trying to work with us as well. That being said, it wasn't able to get signed from the federal government side, and so it hasn't been returned to us for our signature. And so we are waiting to kind of hear what that's going to look like and what it means. I'm sure many of you have heard about the executive orders related to funding freezes. So we've done a lot of work to really articulate, both to our board and to our staff, what that could mean for us, and to gather information about what kind of federal funds we receive and what we would be potentially losing should this freeze truly mean all discretionary and formula funding. It is very unlikely that that will be the case, and we are trying to remain as optimistic as possible. We do think that transportation is a pretty bipartisan issue in many ways. People definitely understand that it's incredibly important, and large infrastructure projects are very difficult to build without support, whether that's your state support or your federal support. So we're monitoring the conversation very closely, but as I'm sure many of you have seen, there's a lot to monitor in Washington, D.C. these days. And so we're just doing our best to have conversations where conversations are available to us. I actually will be flying to Washington, D.C. Monday and Tuesday of next week with our Executive Director, Tim Hale, to have some conversations with newly appointed members of the government, to introduce them to some of the federal grants CCTA has already received and give them updates on the work that we've been doing under those federal grants. And to be honest, to just sort of share CCTA's name with some new folks in the government space, as well as to have meetings with our members of Congress and to have conversations with them about, what approach we should be taking and are taking as we kind of move forward. I wish that I had a clear answer, and I very much hope to have a clear answer in the very near future. But at this point, we're standing all together. I feel like hands held, just kind of crossing our fingers.
Which members of Congress?
Will we meet with? Likely, when we go, we generally meet with what we call our delegation, which is generally Mark DeSaulnier and Garamendi's office. It's very important for us to maintain the relationships with our House members as they're very locally connected. And then we always meet with the staff in Padilla's office. They're really great, and they've come to know us and be pretty familiar with a lot of the Bay Area transportation issues, and so it's great to check in with them. Most of the time, if we have time, we'll also try to meet with folks that are a little bit more outside, so maybe Swalwell's office, for example, or we might try to meet with someone who's just particularly interested in issues that CCTA might have expertise on, for example, VMT, or talking to them about a Gomentum station or workforce development. So it does vary a little bit, but DeSaulnier and Garamendi are always folks we try to meet with, and they're really wonderful and accommodating and always make an effort to really meet with us in person, which is really, really cool.
Thank you very much. If you do meet our transportation director, Sean Duffy, please let him know that a member here, citizen member, is a Challenge fan. So if I ever waste my time, it's watching the Challenge. So hopefully he'll pull through those funds for CCTA. Thank you.
I will absolutely extend that thought. Absolutely. Yeah, I have to say, he has a very, very dynamic resume.
Any final questions before we wrap it up and send Lindy on her way?
Awesome. Well, please have me back. I look forward to talking with you all again later this year. The Gomentum Innovation Alliance, or perhaps just about the community event series, which we will likely launch in the middle spring, I would say. We've definitely started reaching out to a lot of your cities and letting them know that we're excited to be part of the community events. So, Tim Hale, everybody. Also coach of the Giants. No. Anyway, so yeah, definitely look forward to talking to you all again and would appreciate any help with passing on that countywide transportation plan survey. Thank you so much.
Yep, Lindy, thank you. I'm not sure what to call it. It was semi-clairvoyant. Or somebody sent a text at just the right moment. So Tim is here. That'll take us to item 4A, who will be providing an overview of the CCTA and its goals for 2025. This is informational only. And over to you, either Tim or to Matt, if you wish to make an introduction in advance.
Every year or so, we like to, because we have lots of new members and because there's a lot going on here at CCTA, we like to invite our executive director in to, introduce himself to you, especially the new members, and kind of give you all an idea of what his vision is for this agency and maybe what we can expect over the next year. So I'm just going to turn it over to him. He's got a lot of slides to share with you, and this is pretty informal, right, Tim? Feel free to engage.
And I want to encourage all the conversation and the discussion. So I apologize for being. I guess I am on time, and I just got done coaching my son's baseball team. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me here. Really appreciate it. What I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about is what we're planning on for 2025. And before I do that, I wanted to kind of look back on 2024. And so this is a short video that we played for the Authority Board in December. And it's a little recap of everything that we've accomplished in 2024. Wait, you know what? I didn't share the sound. 1 second. As we look back on 2024, I'm excited about the progress that we've made in really shaping the future of transportation in Contra Costa County. One of the most exciting projects that we've worked on this year is the delivery and the continued delivery of our Presto shuttles. This year, we delivered Presto to the community of Rossmore and also to the city of Martinez. We're leveraging cutting-edge transportation technologies. We're looking at the best technologies for our roadway systems, connecting our transportation system in a much smarter way, and using next-generation autonomous shuttles to really improve people's mobility here in our communities, and really designed to really connect everyone in Contra Costa County through these first and last mile solutions. As you know, Gomentum Station is a key cornerstone to our overall Redefine Mobility Innovation Program. Really making sure we're creating opportunities not only for the technology, but for the future workforce within Contra Costa County and beyond. But also by hosting 4th grade and middle school and high school students at Gomentum Station to teach them about these new technologies to really set the future for their careers. We're continuing to learn from our Smart Signal Lab at Gomentum Station and how we can implement new technologies within our local roads, where we're really upgrading about 300 intersections with state-of-the-art technology to be able to manage and connect all of our traffic signals together, move people through our local roads and make our local roads more efficient and more productive. This year at the 9th annual Redefine Mobility Summit, we had a great turnout. This is just not a conference. This is really talking about the future of mobility here in Contra Costa County as well as globally. We're really proud to receive $166 million from United States Department of Transportation to really improve your commute on I-680 And through these dollars, we're fully funding a solution to really reduce congestion in 680 by delivering and completing the express lanes in the corridor, but also bringing new innovative technologies to be able to manage congestion in that corridor. And as we think about accessible transportation, and we are laser focused on this through the creation of the Office of Accessibility and Equity, also launching brand new programs like the LIFE program, the Low Income Fare Equity program, all really focused on making sure people have access to transportation to get to their medical appointments. At the heart of CCTA, we plan and fund and deliver projects. The project that we've made a significant amount of progress on this year is the Iron Horse Trail pedestrian overcrossing. Really provides better connectivity and safer crossing, walking and biking over Bollinger Canyon. One of the exciting projects that we've completed this year is the McCollum pedestrian overcrossing, a critical piece of infrastructure needed to connect a gap in the McCollum Trail in eastern Contra Costa County. With this pedestrian overcrossing, we're unlocking economic opportunities through planned development adjacent to the pedestrian overcrossing, but also preparing this area for a future transit stop. We're very honored to receive Bike East Bay's Project of the Year. And one of the things that CCTA is really proud of is creating our data repository. We're able to collect data from all modes of transportation and leverage that data for more performance-based planning. That data will be leveraged through the development of our countywide transportation plan. The CTP is a key document to set the blueprint for the next 35 years in transportation projects and programs. Through the CTP, we'll better understand the investments needed into mobility for Contra Costa County, really focused around 4 principles: safe and active living, really better connecting our neighborhoods, growing sustainably, and providing access for all. 2025 is going to be another big year. There's going to be some big developments, both with the Office of Accessibility and Equity, the continued deployment of our Presto program, expansion of Gomentum Station, and we're really excited about the future in 2025.
All with 25 people. So all of this is really because of the great leadership of the Authority Board, as well as all the people here that contribute to this, including yourselves here at CCTA and our advisory committee. So really appreciate all the continued support that you've been able to provide over the last several years. Also, I really want to thank our staff. This is really the real reason we're able to get all this work done, is because we have a very high-performing team and dedicated staff to Contra Costa and to transportation in Contra Costa. And so people like Matt Kelly and Emily and Lindy and others here within CCTA. So as we kind of think about where we're going in the future, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about that video. Does anyone have any questions about the video or anything that happened in 2024? Yeah.
I was wondering, can you explain what your Gomentum is? That I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, I can explain Gomentum Station. I don't think I actually included any slides on Gomentum Station, so I can describe it. So Gomentum Station was created in 2014, and the real why of Gomentum Station is really focused on creation of jobs. As you thought about Contra Costa County in 2014, and even today, to a certain extent, we are primarily a bedroom community where we have a lot of people who live here, but we don't have a lot of, the job to housing ratio is roughly about, I think, 0.5. So you have a lot of people leaving the county to go to San Francisco, going to Silicon Valley, and that's still true today. And so the idea was, how can we attract those technology jobs and smarter jobs into Contra Costa County? And so what we did is we went out to Concord Naval Weapons Station in the city of Concord, and we looked at this facility, and this was the previous executive director, Randy Iwasaki, so I credit really all to Randy and his leadership, and we decided that this is the perfect place to test autonomous vehicles. Okay. And so, and through Gomentum Station, we really learn about new technologies, and I'll talk a little bit about some of that in the presentation, but it's really a proving ground, and it really gives us like a front row seat to the future. So what it does, I believe that CCTA is probably one of the few public agencies that really understands this technology, understands how to deploy it in a safe way, and really understands what the technology can and cannot do and what the most appropriate use cases are for this technology. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're so far ahead than other counties, you know, in the Bay Area, and I would even argue nationally. And so now, and as we think about Gomentum Station and we think about the future, something that we're really, really focused on, and this is an effort that Lindy is leading, is we created this Gomentum Innovation Alliance. And the Gomentum Innovation Alliance is focused on workforce development. And I have it in one of my slides, but the Martinez project, the May Mobility Presto project, is the first project that was actually able to train union representative bus drivers into autonomous vehicle operators. And it was the first project in the country to do that. And we've developed a very close relationship with labor. And so a lot of this is focusing on, okay, now, and this is kind of where we're at today, and this is what I think is more going to come out of our Presto program, is we've done these pilots, you know, and CCTA can celebrate a lot of firsts. We were the first agency to test level 4 shared autonomous vehicles in public roads. We were the first to deploy them to the public for free. And so now what we're focused on is how do we scale, right? How do we actually scale it across the county? And I have a little bit of that in my presentation today. But Gomentum Station is very much a cornerstone, and it's also one of the reasons why we get a lot of recognition from US DOT and the national government. Pete Buttigieg, the former Secretary of Transportation, actually came to Gomentum Station about 3 years ago. And so we're currently trying to get the current Secretary of Transportation to come out to Gomentum Station as well. So, but it's something that we're very well known for in both nationally and internationally. Does that help?
Well, I actually knew about the whole autonomous.
Oh, okay.
project out there. I just didn't realize that was the name of it.
Yeah. So that's so Gomentum Station is the name of the proving ground of the testing facility.
Yeah,
and I would say that something that happened in 2024 that is, I think, really important is that the kind of the evolution of Gomentum Station is AAA, the automobile insurance company, was our operating partner. And so back in October of 2023, we got a letter from them that they decided that, you know, we've got what we needed. We've learned from this program. This is no longer a benefit to their members. And so they decided to kind of exit the program. And so in April of last year, there was this co-ownership that was happening between CCTA and AAA. And the board, the authority board, through that transition, wanted to take 100% complete ownership of Gomentum Station. And so in April 1, we took 100% complete ownership of Gomentum Station. We're actually contracted with a not-for-profit called Next Generation Mobility, who does the day-to-day operations at Gomentum Station. And so now we have a sole focus on, you know, and I would say 100% control over Gomentum, and as mentioned in the video, plans for future expansion to continue to meet market demand and to continue to advance our goals here at CCTA. So any other questions about 2024?
Do you mind if I say something toward that? Because people who've been on the board here for a long time, this committee, understand that the thing that I have generally brought up is the short form of it would be like move jobs, not houses or whatever, which is just the whole concept of maybe the easiest way to reduce VMT is actually to convince employers to relocate economic opportunity to the local area so that they're not driving into the city. This whole bedroom community is exactly a mirror of what happened in Boston. So, you know, where you've got the urban center and then the outlying bedroom communities, everybody's trying to get into work in the city. So anyway, the point I was going to make was that one thing that I'm kind of excited about that might dovetail a little bit into what you guys are doing there, the location that you've chosen and so forth, is that in earlier iterations of the plan for development of that site by the city of Concord, all I saw were parks and houses, really, and maybe a little bit of retail. But in this most recent development, there does appear to be like concept of some business parks or something there. And so this is obviously, this would be a nice landing spot for future business, and that dovetails into this workforce development. So to throw some pat on the back, I hope that Gomentum Station is like a model or a seed of thought planted there that will, encourage that business park concept to grow a little bit more, because everybody that could get a job right there, right off of Highway 4 is not necessarily needing to then turn on to 680 and 24 and just, it's good for them, good for their lives, and good for the, taking demand off the system as well. Thank you.
More on, just really quick on Gomentum, because she asked me to mention the website. So we just launched the new website for Gomentum Station, and it's gomentum.org. So it got launched over the weekend, actually. And on there is more information about Gomentum Station, but also there's a page dedicated to the Gomentum Innovation Alliance. And so, and I know Lindy talked about it briefly in terms of the Innovation Alliance, and this is really a focus of, to your very point, Member Miller, that this is really about, how do we create a facility that's really going to attract not only just business and economic development, but also how are we going to provide the facilities to do the necessary training, and so thinking about workshops, laboratories, conference rooms, classrooms, as part of Gomentum Innovation Alliance, academia is right there front and center. And so we're working with University of Berkeley, we're working with University of Davis, we're working with the Meta Transportation Institute, University of San Francisco, and we're bringing those folks to the table to really see how do we, because the ultimate goal is to actually do program development, not just talk about it, but actually take action. And so that's a big part of the Gomentum Innovation Alliance.
Yeah, Member Ash and I, approximately a year ago, we attended a workshop called Future of Diablo Valley or something along those lines. The short version being that there's that look down the road, at Pleasanton, Dublin, and how it basically became an economic, powerhouse. And the sort of the wonderment of like, well, why can't we do that? And there were a lot of people, there was the president of the Bay Area, help me out. Bay Area Council, yep, Jim Linder was there, and there were others who were very familiar with the business community and whatever, and just talking about how it takes sustained work by the entire business community to create, the kinds of, is not necessarily having office space available. It's like, what's the right thing for this? What's the right thing for that? Having the right incubation ready for all those different kinds of things to happen. And it just, they were talking about the sustained effort that's required. Anyway, I say all of that just to say that you could be one of those cogs in the, that is producing this sustained force that could turn Diablo Valley into the same kind of economic engine for workforce, output that we saw from our southern neighbors. Let's hope.
Any other questions about 2024?
Yes, sir. So I'm going to second the bringing jobs to Contra Costa. Thank you. And thank you for your time. I know you've been here twice on the same topic. So also supporting work from home would help in Contra Costa County. But I did have a specific question. I loved the bike bridges over the freeways. How much do I need for a bike bridge in El Cerrito? And
Depends on how big it is. But the McCollum pedestrian overcrossing was roughly about 15 million. And then the Bollinger Canyon is roughly about 22 million.
Cool. And how did they fund it? How did the communities fund it? Was it not, it was not all transportation, Jay? Was local fund, federal?
Yeah, it was a mix of local, federal, state, even regional funds. Yeah, and that's the kind of the name of the game is that these projects take a mix of, several fund sources, yeah.
Well spent.
I just want to add to, so I've worked on the Bollinger Canyon overcrossing. It's a very complicated financial situation using money from all over the place, federal, local, state. However, one major source of funding for that is the return to source funds, the LSM funds that you guys grant to San Ramon every year. They're basically they've committed all their future LSM funds that you guys grant to them that really completed the funding gap on this project. So you guys are actually contributing to projects like that.
Look, I like that for, I really could use that bike bridge over Highway 80, on Central. But we want it pretty, but 50 million sounds right. So I need to convince all my residents and citizens and politicians. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like that.
And we can talk more offline too.
Oh, thank you. I need help. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, I don't see any other green lights, so I'll proceed with the presentation. On to the future. Okay, so this presentation is titled Connected Contra Costa, and what we do envision in terms of CCTA is really taking a bigger role in terms of how the entire system is actually working and working together and fully connected. And in the past, CCTA has really funded a lot of projects in Contra Costa County, but in terms of the plan, fund, and deliver, the delivery piece for CCTA has primarily been focused on the state highway system. And so as you think about the future and you think about the state highway system and you think about the local roads that are inside your community, we are reaching a moment where our infrastructure is built. We have a built environment. And now what we need to think about is what is the best way to efficiently manage that infrastructure and to actually protect the 35 years of investment that Measure J has put into Contra Costa County to make sure and ensure that those investments continue to work and continue to operate the way we intended them to do from day one. And so this really starts moving into the direction of how do we implement new technologies to operate our local road system as well as our highway system, our transit system, and even help support prioritizing emergency services to be able to support such things as emergency evacuations and all of those things. So what we're starting to look at in terms of the future for CCTA, which will require additional funding and consideration of additional funding in the future, because our measure expires in 2034. But a big part of this is going to be, becoming this kind of what I call a digital road manager. Okay. And so this is kind of the, I call it the wheel of success that we've been kind of talking about here at CCTA. And as we think about the future, and because of the amount of change that has happened in transportation, given the post-pandemic environment, trips are very unpredictable. And so now what we're thinking is, okay, what is the role of public transportation in our county? What role should it play in the future? And kind of taking a step back and thinking about, what is that blueprint for the next 50 years for transit? And then the next thing is we start thinking about, we talked about the data dashboard that we created in 2024 and really taking this kind of data-driven approach, really focusing in performance-based decision-making, analytics, and really thinking about that return on investment, right? Thinking about how we can best use every single public dollar that's coming into CCTA. And I'm not saying we don't do that today, but could we do it better, right? Can we go from good, like really good, to great, right? And what that takes and what that thinks about is, what does CCTA as an organization need to look like in the future to be able to support that new future? What roles do we need internally to support that? What type of infrastructure do we need? Do we need to have a regional traffic management center that CCTA is managing? Do we need to have a countywide connected data center that not just CCTA is using, but also all of the local jurisdictions can tap into and be able to benefit from? And then it starts getting into that ROI, the value proposition, and dealing with the new travel patterns. But then it also, as we think about our current infrastructure, it's starting to get down to making really tough decisions about what's important for certain roadways. And so do we need to think about how we're reprioritizing the infrastructure, you know, to really make it truly into a multimodal system? And then and then based on all of those decisions, then we get into system management, you know, and so that's really the supporting future of what we see at CCTA. And kind of the first part of that is going to be what Matt and the planning team is doing is we're working on our countywide transportation plan. And working on our countywide transportation plan is a key blueprint as we kind of map out the next, you know, 35, 50 years. And so I'm going to take you back to the beginnings of CCTA back in 1995, 1996. And so there was an effort that was taken on by CCTA called the Shape Our Future. And I still have the documents, and Shape Our Future was basically an unconstrained vision of what transportation should look like in Contra Costa County. And that is what led to the development of Measure C as well as Measure J, right? And so basically what happened was when Measure C was passed in 1988, there was a lot of questions of what is CCTA? Who does CCTA going to be? What are we going to do with CCTA? What is CCTA going to do? How are they going to support the local jurisdictions? And so now, fast forward 35 years, it took two measures, not one, but two measures to fund that plan, right? And now we're at another moment in time, another pivotal time and moment in time where what should be the future of CCTA to support the next 35 years, right? And so we're at a very, very pivotal time right now within CCTA. And so as we think about these corridors and we think about, you know, these routes of regional significance that we've identified, you know, throughout the county, you know, we typically in the past, we have primarily have left the routes of regional significance up to the local jurisdictions to kind of manage, implement projects, you know, look at different actions. And now in the future, because these are really important arterials that are moving traffic, not just local traffic, but regional traffic, does CCTA need to take a bigger role in advancing strategies and projects within these routes of regional significance? So this really gets into more, you know, kind of steering our focus away from the highway system and moving to the entire system and making sure that how the entire system is going to work. And so one example of that, and a lot of this is already starting to happen. So we deployed our shuttles, but we just recently got a Safe Streets for All grant, a $35 million grant, that's implementing 5 local road projects. And that is the very first time that CCTA is delivering an actual local road project in a community, And so it's, and delivering a project, because I know I'm a civil engineer, I've built lots of projects, from highway to local to bridge to bike paths to roundabouts. I've designed and built them all in my career. And so delivering a project in a local community is much different than delivering a project in the state highway system. Much different challenges. You're closer to the community, you know, and you're dealing with the community, right? And so a big part of this is, as we think about these corridors, is how do we stitch these corridors together to really support all of the new housing needs in our local jurisdictions? Because some of the things that the board comes to me is, Tim, the state's requiring all this new housing, but where's all the traffic gonna go? You know? And I say, CCTA, if you let us, we can come help and be like your advisor, be your coordinator, your facilitator, and be able to help support what does the transportation system need to look like in your community to support new housing, okay? And so I'll give you a really good example. We just recently got a grant for a countywide evacuation study for all emergencies. And so, and really I'll say the primary kind of kind of driver to that grant was obviously wildfires, within Contra Costa County and in the La Miranda area, as well as the Diablo Valley area, all the way down to San Ramon. And so as you think about this, it's, how does an organization, or what organization is going to coordinate a multi-jurisdictional evacuation using our local transportation system? Who's actually going to do that and do that successfully? Is it the county? Is it the trans operator? Is it the city of Orinda on its own with its, 2 police officers? I don't mean to be a dig, but it's just resources, right? And so this is a perfect example of like how CCTA, and I'll call it future CCTA, not CCTA of today, but future CCTA can help come in and support local jurisdictions and coordinate traffic and emergency evacuation situation. And also, as we think, so that's one example. The other example is, I think we haven't spent enough time thinking about how transportation supports economic development in your local communities, right? And I think a lot of this is, you start thinking about how to prioritize transit and thinking about BRT corridors and making communities more accessible to other jurisdictions. You can generate economic development in different ways throughout the committee or without the community. And if you do a better job of connecting all these neighborhoods together within a community, you can move people better, quicker, faster, more efficiently, and hopefully with a hope to get them out of their car, right? And reduce traffic. So then we go on to bike safety. And, this is a perfect example. The Safe Streets for All projects are dedicated bike lanes, complete streets, quick build projects, and, using our countywide connected data center and our dashboard, how are we making really smart, quick decisions, quick build projects to really improve safety in this connected network with bicycles. We at CCTA believes that we also, this is another important decision. This is a tough decision. This is where we need the support of the community, the local jurisdictions to sit there and say, you know what, we may need to do some road diets to really get a safer walking, biking network in a community, and so, or we may, make lanes narrower to be able to fit that infrastructure, or we need to reduce speed limits to be able to get that infrastructure in, and there's actually a bill that was passed last year, right? There was a bill that was passed last year that if your speed limit is over 35 miles an hour, you have to have a dedicated bike lane in it. Dedicated protected bike lane in that street. And so anyway, so there's a lot of focus in terms of bike pedestrian safety, both at the state level, but also locally here. And Colin, I'm sure you heard from Colin, but Colin really spearheads this effort with the implementation of the countywide safety action plan and the implementation of our Vision Zero guide. So next up, and this is an area where I want CCTA to take more of a leadership role. I don't think we're taking as big as a role as we can in this department, and really kind of gets down to just, quite frankly, resources and bandwidth. But CCTA developed the Electric Vehicle Readiness Blueprint, and we developed this concept of Charge Up Contra Costa, and our goal is to implement that plan. And so we've been working with the county. They just recently got a really great CFI grant to basically put electric vehicle charging stations at all Contra Costa County libraries. They're going after another grant. I will say, unfortunately, this is going to be an area where this current administration is going to make significant cuts in federal funding. So this is going to be a tough one, and I think this is an area where we're really going to have to focus on state funding and state programs. Yeah. Do you have a question?
I did a comment on that too. No, I mean.
I'll add it. I can add it. Yeah. And this is just a general slide, but for me just to land and speak to, accessible transportation is really, really key and important for me, for the board, and for our staff. And you saw in the video, we created the Office of Accessibility and Equity. And that Office of Accessibility Equity is really dedicated to accessible transportation and all things equity. And with that work, we're in the process of talking with the Paratransit Coordinating Committee and kind of restructuring and I'll say quote unquote bolstering that committee. And the next adventure that we're going to have in Contra Costa County this year in 2025 is the development of a one-call, one-click center. And so as you go out into the community, and we get into the community quite a bit, we go to these community event series and so forth, and I might have someone that comes up to me in a wheelchair or a caregiver. How do I get accessible transportation service for my family member? And right now, our first line of defense is the transit operators, and they do a great job. They're doing paratransit, right? But sometimes services go beyond paratransit, right? And so to kind of categorize it, you've got kind of curb to curb service, you've got door to door, and also through door service. And so depending on the user, depending on the needs, you have to determine their eligibility, you have to determine, do we have the right service for them? Do we have a gap in our infrastructure or in our programs to maybe not be able to serve the right person, particularly for people under the age of 65? So if you're under the age of 65, you're not eligible for accessible transportation, and so there's a gap in that system, right? And so as we think about that, how can we really make this system really more user-friendly? Because we have actually 26 different accessible transportation services in Contra Costa County. And so as you think about that, that's really confusing to the public. They're all necessary. All of them are providing some level of service in certain subregions of the county. And so as you think about that, when someone comes to me and says, I have to send them, well, who's your trans operator? My trans has County Connection. Okay, well, you need to call County Connection, And that's the last time I get to see that. So I have to assume that they call County Connection. County Connection has the service they need, and if they don't, then I have to assume that County Connection finds the right service for them, because there are other providers in the county like Mobility Matters and others. And that's, as much, I know County Connection does all that, but we have no way to verify that they got the trip, we met the need, or if we determine if there was an actual gap in the system, right? And so the whole idea behind one call, one click is to bring all of those calls to one place. So we give everyone one phone number, they call that one phone number, we have a countywide eligibility database, we have a countywide understanding of all the services that we need, and we can identify the gaps, and then we can figure out the best way to service those gaps. And so that's the whole kind of concept that we're going to be tackling in 2025. This is another awesome program that we're rolling out in 2025. So this is our Safe Transportation for Children, our Street Smarts program. It's a really fantastic program. If you have not an opportunity to visit a school and see this program firsthand, I highly recommend it. And if you need more information on that, you can reach out to Emily or Matt, and we can do that for you. But in the right-hand side, that's Mr. Beeps. That's the mascot. He's a little remote control car, and he talks and performs for the students. And this is all about bicycle safety, walking safety, safe route to schools. And this program has been primarily limited to roughly about 50 or 60 schools in Contra Costa County. And there's actually over 300 schools in Contra Costa County. So in the recent regional funds that we just got, we actually set up a program, a countywide program, to reach out to all over 300 schools throughout the entire county. And so this program is being offered and delivered by the Contra Costa Health Services, WICTAC, SWAT in San Ramon, as well as CCTA. Very important program. And I think you've heard a lot about the CTP, but the Countywide Transportation Plan, this is important because we're going to really document everything that we have been doing and basically set up ourselves for the future. And this is updated every 4 to 5 years in conjunction with the Regional Transportation Plan. So Plan Berry 2050, MTC updates their plan every 4 to 5 years, and then we update our plan. And we usually update our plan to kind of feed into the next plan, basically. And so, but this plan is essential and key to really determine, like I mentioned early on, what are those next projects? Because our next suite of projects are not fourth bore of Caldecott Tunnel. Our next projects are not going to be widening 10 miles of Highway 4. So our projects are going to be very much focused on how do we actually get in and fix those key bottlenecks, like the ones at 680-24, 242 and Highway 4? How do we deal with congestion on I-80? You know, how do we prioritize carpooling and transit in that corridor? So there's a lot of different ways that we're going to be tackling and different strategies in terms of the corridor, but also pulling in not just the highway, but also a lot of the complete street local jurisdiction projects that I was talking about earlier. And this is going to set the foundation for a future transportation expenditure plan. So, and help us walk into the next, 30 to 35 years. I think you're familiar with these. I mentioned the video, but this is really key. This is really thinking about, first and foremost, safety is our number one priority. How do we leverage technology and the infrastructure and quick build projects to make our roadways safer? And then we are developing a really, really cool new policy called the Movement in Place Framework. And this is really developing a template of street design and guidelines of street design to really support better, livable, walkable communities throughout the entire county. And then growing sustainability, that's pretty straightforward in terms of focusing on how do we reduce VMT, how do we focus on electric vehicle charging and meeting our climate goals, and then access for all. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory as well. And also growing sustainability is where economic development is really buried into that. And so specifically with the countywide transportation plan, we hired a consultant to be able to quantify that economic development. And so for example, I think it was 2 years ago in 2023, I went to Indianapolis, Indiana, and they actually planned for 2 bus rapid transit projects. So think of buses, that are dedicated lanes, at-grade boardings, et cetera. And they primarily tackled those 2 corridor plans with the goal. Number one goal was, how do we revitalize these communities? How do we bring in businesses? How do we support businesses? And they quantified that using revenue models with this company called Urban 3. And we're looking at that same approach as part of the countywide transportation plan. And I've been back there since, and they're achieving those goals. So as you think about San Pablo BRT, I know there's a lot of concerns about, well, if we remove parking to these businesses are going to be impacted. Well, Matt's going to be coming out with an RFP to hire a consultant to look at more of the economic development pieces of that, and really think about, well, if you bring in BRT and transit, you can better think that real estate, better think that parking, better think that window, front window of your business, and actually potentially attract more people, to your business. And so kind of taking a different angle and approach in terms of the economic benefits for a specific project. So that's like the first section of my presentation. So I have 2 more sections. But I'm happy to answer any, stop or pause or answer any questions that you might have.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you talked a lot in the beginning of that presentation about the concept of kind of connecting all of the roadway infrastructure, all the various types of transportation infrastructure within the county. Understanding that all of those assets are owned and operated by different jurisdictions, transit providers, rail providers, all that. How do you plan to incentivize or leverage, what do you plan to leverage to bring everyone to the table and make sure that they're all bought in and following CCTA's lead on that? Because I feel like one piece of the puzzle not at the table is going to make an inefficient system. So
yeah, this is probably the toughest problem that we're faced with in terms of everything that I just talked about, and it's local control, right? That's and this is actually where you all come in, is how can we support and talk to our local communities about the advantages and benefits of potentially sharing, not giving up, but sharing some of that local control. I'll give you some examples. I think the primary support is probably with the smaller cities, because the smaller cities, They want the resources. They want the support, I was talking with the town manager of Moraga last week, and he was like, I'm in. Like, you can come in and manage my roads, and you're all the power to you, completely transparently. I mean, some of the tougher cities are, the larger cities, like Walnut Creek, Concord, Richmond, those are more the tougher cities because they have infrastructure in place. They have traffic management centers, they feel like that they are, managing. But I think the benefit of having a fully connected system is, as you think about Ignacio Valley Road and you think about Oak Grove and the intersection of Oak Grove in the morning, and you have like a 2-mile queue of people because they're using one intersection to meter the traffic into the city, that can be avoided, in my opinion, because you're not balancing and using the entire network. You're just relying on one street, one intersection. So I think that's the benefit, that we can bring to the community and bring to the city is how do we leverage the entire system? And then you have some concerns of, well, now you're just sending more traffic through my city, right? And it's just like, okay, well, what do you want? And so it gets down to the benefits. And I think quite frankly, this will be a huge discussion in a future expenditure plan in terms of, what the policies are going to be and how to incentivize, the local jurisdictions to help support, this kind of vision and concept. But in my mind, we're not trying to take control. We're not trying to take ownership of anything. All we want to do is walk into a local jurisdiction and we're here to help and support and help coordinate, bring in those additional resources because, quite frankly, transportation is, in some of the cities, are probably not on the top 5 of their list because they're focused on security and police and safety and housing and homelessness and all the other things that these cities are focused on. And so, which is what they need to be focusing on. And so we're here to come in and support those local jurisdictions and give them those additional resources. And we're thinking through right now through the countywide transportation plan, how can we really incentivize, local jurisdictions? And, quite frankly, a big part of that conversation is going to be return to source. Big conversation is going to be return to source.
My favorite question to ask city traffic engineers when they come here is, how do you coordinate with other cities on routes of regional significance? And I think at least 2 cities have said, like, they came back and it was like, why would I ever talk to another city? And even the ones who say they do, they really aren't. So I definitely commend you for taking that lead. And I know we've had conversations about that. But somebody has to come in and fix some of these routes you're talking about.
Tim, are the routes identified now? I mean, is there a list of them somewhere?
Yeah, there is a map of the routes of regional significance, and we actually are we're updating that map right now as part of the current update of the countywide transportation plan. It's really not an update, it's pretty much a brand new one. Yeah, we pretty much took the old one and just kind of dumped it off to the side. So, but yeah, there is a map in the current approved plan, the 2017 CTP. There is a current approved map of routes of regional significance. I'm sure we can share that with all of you, and then we're in the process of updating it as part of the new CTP.
Interesting, thanks.
So.
A question for you. I guess I'm trying to understand, and you may touch on this later also, but what do you see as some of your biggest short-term goals? And I'm thinking about the one click, one call. And I ask that because in terms of funding, like how do you prioritize, or is funding pretty much set for all the projects you're anticipating, or do you anticipate any kind of budget shortfalls?
No, that's an excellent question. So as we think about, our portfolio, if you think about Measure J, roughly $120 million per year. Our annual budget is roughly about $215 million per year. So the additional revenues are coming from federal, state funds. And so, but primarily the priorities have been basically dictated in the current Measure J expenditure plan. And so that really kind of limits where we can actually start focusing our efforts and time. Probably the most leeway we have is actually in the planning department, you know, where we can study all these different things and really understand where we're going into the future. But in terms of like, you know, capital investment, the Measure J expenditure plan really just outlines. And so, and we have delivered, including the local jurisdictions, we've delivered roughly about 90% of all of the capital improvements. And some of the last remaining ones, there's probably a half a dozen local projects left, maybe a dozen. And then for us at CCTA, probably the big one is our Innovate 680 program is probably where the remaining majority of Measure J is kind of left. So, but in terms of priorities, you know, we've basically have leveraged the current CTP work, laid out all those priorities for us, and that's what we've been kind of using as our blueprint in terms of funding those projects. Now, yeah, and I think the other thing that kind of helps guide us determine projects too is going to be grant funding. You know, so for example, like the countywide evacuation plan, you know, that was primarily guided by, hey, there's this Caltrans Sustainable Communities Grant Program. This is an eligible thing. You know, we've got some concerns. We've been asked by local jurisdictions, can we pursue? So that's another way of kind of doing it, is really focusing on the grants and really reading the grant requirements and making sure we're picking the right project to be successful to bring in more dollars into Contra Costa County. So I would say the secret sauce of CCTA is leverage. Like we do a really good job of leveraging dollars. So, you know, like for example, the Innovate 680 program has roughly 19 million in Measure J, and that's a $500 million program. So we're very, very good at it. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, just going to, you talked about, you know, kind of we're working our way toward a built-out interstate infrastructure or state road infrastructure, and kind of now we're looking inward to the communities or whatnot. And since you've managed to come away with one project, although the ink didn't get wet on this one with 8 zeros behind it, I'm going to inspire you maybe to look at 9 for a first time. And that is the kind of density that the state and the metropolitan planning for the RENA and everything, the kind of density that it envisions over here in the East Bay only kind of makes sense if the sort of transportation options that were present in urban environments were also present here. And so I just want to put out there that it may be time to look far into the future at whether we need something akin to the VTA rail. And you talk about you know, we don't have any usurpable, affordable land that we could do that on. It might be taking one lane away from Ignacio Valley, or you talk about a road diet, that'd be a road diet. But see, we built ourselves out so much without building the corresponding, you know, infrastructure like subways or something like that, that the density that's being demanded by RENA is not achievable without complete total gridlock. So anyway, I was just going to say that something akin to VTA that's atop, you know, atop streets, on streets, and uses some of the wider regional routes of significance that are already, you know, public ways, maybe something worth, you know, banging your head against and looking at in the future.
Absolutely. I'm sure you've all have heard about Glideways and the ATN project out in eastern Contra Costa County. If you haven't, I'm happy to come back and tell you more about that. But that is basically a rail type fixed guideway solution, very narrow, 5 feet wide. And it's something that we're looking at in terms of how do we leverage that and build a network of that, you know, in Contra Costa County. So, yeah.
I know that in the original Measure J, okay, I keep seeing City of Hercules. one of the ones was to look at reopening the train station there. And I did that, is that like, that was one of
That
the.
is, yeah, so that, right, so we're doing that in partnership with the city of Hercules. That it's now called the Hercules Hub. And so, a big milestone that was achieved probably about 2 years ago was the Capitol Corridor approved it as a stop. And so that was like the big kind of initial step. That project is challenged with really finding local match for grant funding. We've been supporting, I think we've spent, I want to say like, don't quote me on this, but it's a few $1 million, 4 or 5 boarding of Measure J, supporting that project in terms of planning and design and all those things. And probably the biggest cost in front of them right now is basically right-of-way cost, utility relocation cost. And, it's, the heart of design and construction of those utility relocations to get the project as shovel-ready as possible to get to that next step to where you can compete for grant funding, and that's what Measure J is all about, is leveraging Measure J to get the project ready to go and get it to a position and position the project in a way that will be successful to attract those dollars into the county. Okay, so part 2. So this is all about becoming a digital road manager and the steps we're going to take in the next 2 years to basically become that digital road manager. So as you think about, why is my slide not changing? Okay, there we go. So this is our vision, is really focusing on this kind of people-centered mobility concept and really focusing on how to give people choices, how to make the system more connected, and really leveraging every mode of transportation, right? And so something that even I'm trying to overcome with folks and is to really, when you think public transportation, what do you immediately think about? BART. What else do you think about? Buses, right? So this is our challenge, is we think public transportation is buses. And so we have to start thinking about public transportation as all things transportation, right? For example, bike share. One of the reasons why bike share comes into a community like Pleasant Hill, for example, Bird was here for 6 weeks. They didn't have enough ridership. They pulled out, they left, right? And bike share, in my opinion, is a really good mobility option. But we have to think about bike share as part of and as an offering of the public transportation system, which may require subsidies, right? Same thing for car share, same thing for bike share, share mobility hubs. All of these things can be part of the public transportation system, not just think of, oh, that's just the private sector, let them come in, let's see if they'll actually make it work, right? And so that is the challenge and the culture and the mindset that we have to overcome. Yeah.
I'm sorry to add, so one of the things is like looking at this kind of the public transportation and the mobility is that like really considering, the tool that you need to get someplace. And overall, overwhelmingly in the Bay Area, we just prioritize the car over everything. So in your method, are you really looking at like, okay, certain distances, the expectation is that we're trying to build is that you're going to be able to take something beside a car because, a 5-mile ride, a bike or, a Presto?
Presto, yep.
Yeah, might be a much better option
Yep.
than getting in your car.
Yep.
So are you going to kind of, in your planning, look at distances and like really try to prioritize like, this is the best tool, let's make this the most usable option to do that?
100%. So I don't even think I have slides on it, but we are currently doing an integrated transit plan. And do I have slides? I don't know if I have slides. We're currently doing an integrated transit plan. And in the integrated transit plan, we worked with our transit operators in Contra Costa County and we identified 9 transit priority corridors. Like that would be basically prioritized transit, BRT, et cetera, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be BRT. It just has to be prioritized multimodal transit, right? And then beyond that, we developed basically a full network of shared mobility hubs. And those shared mobility hubs are the things that go out into the communities and bring all these multimodal things, you know, to the community. And so Presto shuttles could be one of those things. And we firmly believe, I firmly believe that, you know, transit fixed route is great. It's appropriate in a lot of corridors, not appropriate in all corridors. And I think as you think about transit and you think about people who are taking transit, those are the people that are going to take transit. Those are the people that have to take transit. And so the question is how are we going to get the people, how are we going to get the non-frequent rider into transit? And what we found, and I wish I had the slides on and everything, but what we found is that they're basically looking for an on-demand, they want that car experience, the Uber experience in public transit, right? So that's where the Presto shuttles come in to play. You know, so when we go out into the community and we talk and we bring the shuttle with us and we talk about, you're saying this thing would come and pick me up from my doorstep and actually take me to downtown Walnut Creek? We're like, yep. They're like, well, when's it coming? You know, and and that sounds really simple, but there is a number of hurdles in order to implement something like that. So, but that's what this is about. This is about, to your point, thinking about what are those, like we did a whole market assessment of Contra Costa County in terms of exactly what you're saying, in terms of where is the latent demand in those like 2-mile and 5-mile trips. You know, over 50% of our trips in Contra Costa County are less than 2 miles. You focus on those 2-mile trips, boom, you just reduce congestion by 50%, right? So that really pulls in share mobility hubs, bike share, car share, walking, biking, those bike networks, building. And, you know, the bike network that we've planned out is $1 billion bike network. It's going to take forever to build that, right? And so, but where can we do quick build and smart connectivity projects? You know, so for example, I live in Pleasant Hill. So like, how can I build better connectivity from Gray Gardens to downtown Pleasant Hill so people feel safe to take their bikes, right? So I think that things like that, right? Like you think about the connectivity, about how to connect neighborhoods with areas of interest and business, and that's the whole movement in place framework that we're doing as part of the countywide transportation plan. So this is kind of our vision. You talk about these on-demand shuttles, and so, and I'm going to introduce some concepts here, but we have an operations center here at Contra Costa County, our CCTA. We start leveraging that traffic management center to be able to communicate the vehicles. We leverage that, we leverage digital infrastructure to be able to communicate to vehicles and communicate and use it for traffic management. And so the whole concept is by leveraging better data and be able to communicate with these vehicles. You know, I know a lot of people cry out about Waymo in San Francisco, you know, and I've talked with people in San Francisco. I've talked with Jeff Tumlin. I've talked with Tilly in San Francisco and Tilly Chang. And so like, and it's our job in public sector jobs to be able to support those new technologies. That's what I think. And so this vision is about having an operations center and having essentially a publicly available cloud of data that's able to communicate to vehicles, okay? And not just our little shared autonomous vehicles, but all connected vehicles, and be able to tell vehicles, where is that ambulance? Where is, you know, that stop or that congestion? Where is the accident, right? And this gets into the whole idea of when we have that kind, so what you're doing is you're basically building a digital twin of the infrastructure in real time and leveraging that digital twin to be able to communicate through the infrastructure to vehicles and start actually managing traffic, right? And so one good example is we just did a pilot on the 680 corridor with Nissan, Verizon, and UC Berkeley. And I got demoed it about 3 weeks ago. And we were able to literally control a connected vehicle speed, right? So you put the vehicle into adaptive cruise control, and the vehicle was told how fast to go to be able to smooth out traffic on 680, you know? And so that's how you're going to solve congestion on 680, is leveraging technology to like. Now, the hardest part of that conversation is how do you educate the public and how do you get people to support that and understand that. So, but this is what we're talking about, is really coming in and being this digital road manager. So this is just a vision. We call it Digital Motions. And this is kind of our kind of roadmap here. So we currently have our countywide smart signal system project underway right now. It's under design. It's going to construction later this year. That project is going to handle the first 3 steps. And so really asset management, inventory, upgrading the infrastructure, creating that digital communication, lines of communication to all the traffic signals. Sorry, not all. 324 intersections in Contra Costa County, particularly the ones that are on routes of regional significance, to be able to manage those arterials more effectively. So that's kind of the first step. That's the first phase. And so that first phase, those first 3 steps, the smart signals, is all going to be under construction next year. And what that does is it basically puts an operations center in every single local jurisdiction, which is, again, benefit to local cities that they didn't have before. And then second, it puts a traffic management center here at CCTA and creates the communication. So CCTA will be able to see and be able to communicate with those 324 intersections. So it creates the communication. Second step, which will hopefully be the next tranche of federal funding that we're going to get out of the next reauthorization of the infrastructure bill, which I do anticipate to happen in the next 2 years, before the midterms, before the Republicans lose the House. And so in that next tranche of funding, the connected system is the system that will then lay on top of that to be able to fully manage, right? Fully manage the system. So that's the next tranche of funding. And then the third step is the systems approach, where you, where you actually start connecting different systems together. So for example, the best user scenario, and I've actually seen this happen in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, is you connect dispatch of police and ambulance to your traffic management center. And so basically what's happening is you're literally holding a green wave for that ambulance going down the local road in real time, and you're managing and particularly getting those emergency responders there quicker and safer. And similarly, like if BART goes down and you need to do a bus bridge, we can do the same thing. We can deadhead buses and prioritize those buses all the way to pick up passengers, and then prioritize them to the next BART station. So those are the types of use cases, and I already talked about emergency evacuation. So those are the types of use cases that the systems approach, and that will be the third phase of the project, third tranche of funding.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Is there a commitment to securing the data and treating it like it's people's lives are at stake, so we don't hack? Like, I don't know if you've done a scenario where people can hack in and, put car against car, evil thoughts.
100%. So yeah, I mean,
Make sure,
that's a very big part of this in terms of cybersecurity and making sure the system's secure. Right now, we're building the system on Amazon Web Services platform, and so that's one of the most secure platforms I think that's available. But there's also a number of like cybersecurity protocols and checks and balances and tests. We call it it's called oh man, I'm gonna mess up the technical term. Like white hackers, I think that's what it's called. White hackers that actually you actually pay these people to like go in and actually try to hack the system, basically.
My concept is who owns the data, and I would, I think.
So that's a good question.
Yeah.
So the data, when it comes to like privacy concerns and those types of things, our main goal is obviously to protect personal identification information, number one. And then number two, all this information is going into our countywide connected data center anonymously, and so all of that data is going in and creating that digital twin, in the system. Yeah. So this is just a Venn diagram of the 3. You guys don't see it yet, a little delay. This is a Venn diagram of the digital road manager. So you've got digital asset management. This is another big incentive, I think, to local jurisdictions is how do we digitize infrastructure and do a better job of inventory and asset management and do predictive maintenance using AI. Also digital traffic management, that's, I already explained a lot of that. And then starting to leverage digital construction. So like on the 684 phase 1, 2A project, we're actually creating a building information model. We're actually developing a model of the construction, all the conflicts, and we'll turn that over to the contractor to hopefully give us better construction, better bids, less change orders, et cetera. And that's the whole digital construction side of it. This is I call it the pyramid of success. I'm not going to go through all of it. There's a big delay here. First and foremost, we have the technology, the data we've talked about. processes, what are we going to do with the data, analytics, what do we need to do as an organization in terms of having a central location and coordination, services, vision. These are the data use cases that we would kind of use as part of our countywide connected data center. I'm just going to kind of hit this as a splash here. This is the new data repository that we just created, so you're all welcome to, it's actually available to the public. And this is really about being transparent with the public. You know, so as we're collecting data, delivering our projects, also looking at congestion, you know, as we think about the measure and we think about creating a baseline, how is CCTA performing? Are we actually achieving the goals that we told the voters that we were going to achieve in this next expenditure plan? And right now, you know, as we're kind of developing projects and we set out performance metrics and KPIs, as that project has continued to be developed in the life cycle of the project, are we making sure as we're developing the project, we're still meeting the goals and the KPIs that it set out, because this is what's being governed by the total network, and making sure that this project is achieving its goal to benefit the entire network. And so you're constantly like looking at how that project is benefiting and measuring, and then when the project is actually deployed, you're doing the on-time, full-time monitoring to make sure it actually did what it was set out to do, and then fully looping back to the planning process to see if we actually need to change something in the planning process. That does not get done today, everyone, by any agency, quite frankly. And so this is the idea of becoming a more data-driven, performance-based organization. And this is the roadmap. So we've got the data center, the smart signals. We're already doing cloud transit signal priority. We have a fiber communications plan to be able to install and bring in a middle mile fiber communications network to support all this communication. The operations center, as well as coordinated adaptive ramp metering on 680. These are the 6 projects right now undergoing right now to help implement the digital road manager vision. So then now moving into the third part of my presentation, which is Presto. And short video. Let's see if it goes. Oh. No, now it's going to go back because there's a delay. There we go. I don't know how this is going to work with the delay. This is the Presto program, and these are pilots. So the question is what's next, right? What are we learning from this? What's happening? What's going to happen as we think about scalable deployment in Contra Costa County? And you know all these projects, but this is, come on, I don't like the delay. Bishop Ranch, over 1,600 passengers to date. Very, very unique use case in terms of being a business. This was the first shared autonomous vehicle project open and available and free to the public in the Bay Area. Rossmoor, I tell you, these folks love it. They're asking for more. And they were asking for more even before we even deployed it. And now they're asking for more. And we just got a letter from Rossmoor actually asking CCTA to actually enter into negotiations to be their actual transportation mobility provider for the entire community. So this is a new part of CCTA. We've never operated and maintained anything, and so this is starting to see CCTA kind of stepping into this role of being a mobility provider and actually offering services to the public. Presto Martinez, Contra Costa County Hospital, and these are all the stops in Martinez. Very, very cool project. I already mentioned the workforce development piece here. I love this project, very excited about it. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to continue after December 31st. Still looking for like a really solid champion for this project. to continue to fund it. I think Bishop Ranch, I mean, Sunset Development's very excited. They're looking to continue. Rossmore's looking to continue. This one, still kind of not sure if it's going to continue beyond, because all of this is being funded by federal funding, federal grant funding, so not by Measure J. So in order to keep these projects going, we need like a whole another third-party revenue source. So what are we learning from these projects? One thing we're learning is, how do we expand? What use cases do we have to apply this in? Also, what the current platforms are doing and are not doing. You know, for example, Rossmore, intermittent service every single day because of electric charging. You know, they literally only hold a 3 to 4 hour charge, and then they go out of service. You know, and so it's been really challenging to offer service in Rossmore. Bishop Ranch, first generation shared autonomous vehicles, basically what's on available to the market. And so now we're kind of looking like, okay, what's the next step? What's automotive grade, level 4 autonomous driving, making sure you can do remote monitoring, making sure it's ADA compliant, making sure it's federal vehicle motor safety compliant, Buy America compliant. And right now what we're currently doing is we're starting to look and explore new business models to transit and how we can use this technology to help better support new business models, but also support the transit fiscal cliff. And we're highly interested in entering into P3 arrangements and bringing in public-private partnerships. And this is a diagram of kind of the 4 pillars. You have the vehicle creation and supply, so the manufacturing of the vehicle, the operations and maintenance of the infrastructure, the operations of the vehicle, and then the actual user customer service interface. You know, and so we've been really talking with certain companies across the world, across the globe, about certain offerings that they may or may not have. We're looking for OEM's original equipment manufacturer, like a Nissan, or someone that actually has experience in manufacturing vehicles on an assembly line. And so this is something we're looking at in terms of how do we bring in, a big part of a future expenditure plan is going to be, how do we leverage P3s and how do we bring in private capital into the county? And so right now, historically, our secret sauce has been Measure J and leveraging that against state and federal funds. So how can we add like a 4th leg to the stool for private capital? And that's what the Glideways project is. It's all private capital. So we're very active in the community, very proud of this, actually. We are taking very extensive steps of getting into your communities, learning and educating the public about who CCTA is. It's amazing to me that no one knows about CCTA and the benefits that we bring into the community. So that's step 1. And Lindy actually is implementing a brand new customer relations manager platform to be able to better connect with our community. But this is all coming this year. We are going to have a board workshop in May to basically unveil this like master plan vision to the authority board, through the countywide transportation plan. And then we're going to take that plan out to the public in the summertime to get feedback and input. If you haven't listened, we have a podcast. It's not as good as Jared's. But we have a podcast that's got a lot of good information about transportation, what's happening. I don't post as many episodes as Jared does. I believe in quality, not quantity.
That's because I had Tim Hale as a guest. It brought down the level of...
No, very good podcast. I actually listen to his podcast pretty regularly. So I'm a podcaster. I love podcasts. And so anyways, very good. And what I like about the podcast, there's a great bench of information on there about what's happening at CCTA. You can learn about the shuttles, you can learn about our programs, you can learn about our projects, you can learn about advanced air mobility, and I didn't even get into that, but we're planning for vertiports and advanced air mobility and all those things coming into Contra Costa County. And then if you have the opportunity to come, you do get a free ticket to the Redefined Mobility Summit. It's on April 22nd. We're going to have 4 really, really great panels. The panels are going to be focused on kind of next generation autonomous vehicle software platforms, really thinking about how does AI really advance this technology and make it safer. Another one's going to be on innovative transit business models. The other one is going to be on workforce development and kind of showcase the work we're doing with the Gomentum Innovation Alliance. And then the other one that I'm really excited about is it's going to be cities of the future. And so we're going to bring in speakers from all over the country to really talk about some of the amazing innovative things that they're doing to start innovating mobility. Particularly, so there are some cities like Philadelphia, Seattle, Portland, even Bend, Oregon, that are really starting to get into this digital management and really delivering and implementing what's called curbside management and parking management. And Philadelphia is even taking it to the extent that we want to take it is how do you manage from basically not curb to curb, but right away to right away throughout the entire corridor. So we're going to bring some of those really cool speakers in the Redefine Mobility Summit, and you know it's kind of a selfish thing. We architect the entire agenda around pushing our own agenda, and really help educate what other people are doing across the country and the globe around some of the things we want to do: innovate transit, workforce development, innovative cities, and really next generation AI and autonomous vehicles. This is my contact information. You can snap a QR code if you want, but this gets you everything you want to get in touch with me if you ever wanted to. I really appreciate this. That's my last slide, but really appreciate the service that you offer and support CCTA. I think this committee is really a big, important cornerstone to what we're doing here at CCTA. You represent the communities, and as you can see, I probably said community about 300 times in my presentation, and it's really key. And I think knowing where we're going and the challenges that we have, I really appreciate, what you're doing in terms of asking the right questions, and really starting to get more engaged with the work that we're doing here. And I want that, and I want to see that, and I want you to do that, and I want to see those questions. And I think that level of engagement's exciting because we're going to need you and the public to support this vision if we want to be successful. So there's going to be a lot of hurdles, a lot of governance, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of hurdles and challenges are going to in order to actually to implement the vision that I just laid out for you. And so, but it really starts with all of you to be able to ask those right questions as you're kind of getting these presentations and getting additional speakers. And I'm happy to come back and talk about anything you ever want me to talk about. All you got to do is ask Matt and Emily, and I will come talk about anything you want. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the time. And I know that was a very lengthy presentation, but hopefully you enjoyed it. And happy to continue to dialogue and answer any questions you might have.
Hey, Tim, just clarify, when did Bishop Ranch launch and when did Rossmore launch on the Prestos?
Yeah, good question. So Presto Bishop Ranch launched in April of 2023. So we're coming up on our 2 years. And then Rossmore launched in August of 2024. And then Martinez launched in September of 2024. And, we actually just talked about this in a staff meeting. I think it's important to share because I think Presto, we tend to think about the service, the riders, and I just want to really emphasize the goals of the project. Number one goal of that project is safety and really understanding the technology. And so we were lucky to be a recipient of an automated driving system grant by FTA, one of 8. And FTA is highly interested in our project because it's the only project out of the 8 that is giving them real-time data directly out of these autonomous vehicles. And so as these vehicles are running around every single day, that autonomous vehicle data is going into a cloud, and it's going into a cloud and being evaluated by UC Berkeley, FTA, to support future rulemaking around autonomous vehicles. And so FTA, I think they're looking at it from the standpoint of use cases and riders and those things, but their primary goal is to get the data out of these vehicles. And the reason why they want the data is because when you think about a bus and you think about putting public into a bus, that bus has to go what's called Altoona tested. And so Altoona Tested is basically a kind of a, I'll call it a third-party validation process to make sure that that bus meets not only federal vehicle motor safety compliance, but all the other FTA requirements in order to be safe to put that bus into operations for the public. And so what FTA is faced with is, how do we do an Altoona tested process on these autonomous shuttles? They don't have the data, they don't understand the technology, and so our project is one of the few projects, if not the only project, giving them this kind of data. And we've committed to giving them 1 year of consistent data. And what's interesting is that it was really funny. Last year I was in DC, and we just had our normal federal advocacy trip. And we just scheduled a meeting with FTA, and I walk into this meeting, and it's like the FTA administrator and all her deputies. I'm going, whoa, what did I do wrong? And so, and she had, I mean, this is our reputation. CCTA has a very strong reputation on the Hill, and she had a book about 2 or 3 inches thick that really was a briefing document of CCTA, you know. And we went through all our projects, we talked about everything, they loved CCTA, all the things, but at the very end, it was like, Tim, we want the data. Like, you cannot renege on this. Like, you have to commit to giving us the data on this project. It's super important to them. And just to give you a glimpse of like what we're doing, we're looking at like disengagements, distance to vehicles, speed, trajectory, all these things to be able to allow academia, as well as like Volpe, which is a transportation research center in DC, in Virginia. But like, these are organizations that are going to analyze this data and determine, well, why did this vehicle disengage at this location? Was it a pothole? Was it a faded stripe? Was it because it was too close to a vehicle? Was there an object inside its safety envelope? All these things, right? And so it's going to really give them some large insights, big insights into rulemaking and how to help scale and implement this technology in a very safe way in the public transportation system. And that's our grant. That's what CCTA is leading.
Yeah, Tim, quick plug. I listened to the Mark DeSaulner podcast. It was excellent. So for any of you guys, listen to the podcast. And I've gone to the Redefining Mobility Summit last year. It was also really excellent. So if you guys get a chance to go, do go. Always love listening to your vision, Tim, because it's so illuminating. That's why I'm here, and I think that's why a lot of us are here. A little follow-up on Bishop Ranch. So my question was going to be, so the numbers are dropping a little bit with a bunch of the businesses pulling out of Bishop Ranch. So far, it's been all free. You know, so what do you see going forward with Bishop Ranch? And maybe that ties into the FTA and the data, but where is this headed? And you know,
no, good question. I didn't spend enough time on that. So, so CCTA, we just released we actually closed it, but we just did a request for qualifications, really circled around those 4 pillars that I was talking about: vehicle manufacturing, operations, vehicle requirements, manufacturing, operations, and bringing in P3 capital. And we actually got 4 submittals on that. So I can't tell you who, but we got 4 submittals. And we're actually going to keep it open-ended because I think it's going to be an opportunity to continue to assess and see where the market's at and where the market's going. But next step for us is to really go to Sunset Development and talk about next steps and next chapter. And a big part of that, I mean, businesses are leaving, but they have this plan of building housing there, you know, at Sunset and Bishop Ranch. We're currently working on a shared mobility hub there in Bishop Ranch. It'll probably be one of the first in the county. And that'll be the first step. Second step is really waiting for like a next generation shuttle or vehicle, you know, because the Navia shuttle that's there only goes 11 miles an hour. It really primarily is in the parking lot. It really doesn't help kind of connect things together. And so I think what we're really working for is a vehicle that can go like 35 miles an hour, you know, and be able to really get out of the parking lot and be able to go to Marriott, go to City Center, go to the City Hall, you know, even go to Danville, you know, and really open up the access of that community and future housing, you know. And so, so I think the next step is hopefully at the end of this year, our goal would be to really have a roadmap of like what the next step is with Sunset Development and Bishop Ranch, what type of vehicle we're going to be providing, because the Navia is not sustainable. and then how we're going to provide the operations there.
Thank you for your presentation. I think you're a great champion and you should keep that dream alive. I mean, keep fighting for the Transit Operations Center. I see the vision. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, Tim and Matt and Emily, for your leadership. For all of us, like, when you hear Tim talking about, like, on Capitol Hill, they are recognized as transit leaders. We are the only people in the country running this pilot program. Forget that we are so far ahead of Alameda or Solano or even Santa Clara counties in terms of transportation and embracing the future. Like, CCTA is a worldwide leader, Gomentum being here and all these other things. And so just thank you for your leadership. And I hope you guys all appreciate that. And I don't know if Tim will say it, so I'll say it, right? This is the future of CCTA, but to do that, and why he's talking about communities and this messaging, is because there will eventually be a request for additional funding, both regionally, as we've talked about in here, related to BART, but also for CCTA. And I think they need our help to be the messengers back to our communities in lots of ways over the next couple of years.
Yeah, in fact, I've been thinking hard about the fact that, you know, I need to submit basically a short one-paragraph written thing to our city council every time that we have this meeting. Then I need to shoot a paragraph in for the next city council meeting so that they can, in their reports section, the city councilors are aware of what's going on. And I haven't thought about that, sadly, for a long time, but there needs to be a feedback loop, and then that'll increase in volume as we have some sort of needs to get some big messages out.
Thank you. Great idea. If you guys send us the slides, like I make up my own stuff, but maybe it'll be a better message if yeah, we should do that. That's our homework to share with our city councils. Thank you.
Yeah, and on, just like relative to your city councils, just as an FYI, not this year, but next year, I plan to do a road show to all the city councils next year. So I've done it once already. I did it like 2 years. I did it in 2022, I think. But I'm getting ready to do like another road show in 2026.
Thanks, Tim. Well received.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for your interest, and thank you for all your support.
What's that? Yeah, we had a 4C. It is already 8 o'clock. I am mindful that that informational item might be better received when we have some time and aren't running over.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Maybe we can just kind of daylight the item now, since it's been on our agenda twice now, and we've run out of time. Yeah, the chair and I have talked a couple of times about going over the bylaws and roles of this committee. We've got a lot of new members, and people are always asking, what is our role here? And I think you heard some of what we want your role to be from Tim just now. But staff has also been thinking about some ideas where, should you be interested, you know, giving you more opportunities to get more involved, you know, having that two-way conversation between your council, this group and your council, and back. We want to, this agency wants to know what's going on locally, and we want the locals to know what we're doing. So having that two-way conversation is important. But I think we can get into that more when we have some more time, but I'll let the chair.
Yeah, I guess my soundbite to it would be, can we do more than just checklists? You know, the checklists are a requirement that we do and do well, but we've got some really capable people here, and are there more things we could be doing? and there is the possibility of study groups integrating into other activities. The emergency evacuation plan was hinted at recently. I know there's been enthusiasm on that topic with some of the members, particularly La Miranda-based members, that's a real serious issue if you were to have a fire, in heaven forbid, in that part of the county. And perhaps there are ways that we can take the enthusiasm and capabilities of this group and leveraging them beyond just approving checklists. So how we could go about that, how we do better feedback. I know Chair of the Board, who happens to be Danville as well for the time being, has said, hey, perhaps you and Vice Chair could come to one of our meetings and give us an update. I'd certainly like to know what the committee would want us to tell them. I could make something up, but that may not be aligned with the wishes of committee. So there's quite a bit to explore in that space. We have to do it within the context of the bylaws. And so what would we be interested in doing? How can we go about doing that?
Yes, so maybe between now and the next time we agendize it, take a look at the bylaws that are included in your packet today. See if there's any things you can think about, your interests, like how we can bring those together. But yeah, we'll have a more organized conversation where I'll help facilitate with the chair, and we'll lay out some ideas that staff has been thinking of, and that'll actually give us more time to think of more ideas.
Love it. And before we close, in addition to welcoming our new member from La Miranda, or Rinda, I should also have welcomed back our member Patel, and glad you're back and trust everything's going well. Congratulations, and glad to see you back.
I just have a question on the bylaws and stuff. Are there a few members who have been consistent no-shows, which makes an impact on our quorum? Emily, can you?
Yeah, so the short answer to that is yes, that's a good observation. It is something that we are keeping track of and actively working on for those members.
One question, so maybe if you guys could send this out, I try very hard to schedule my thing around these meetings, what I'm doing. So if you could tell us what months we're not meeting in the summer, and maybe set the date for the November, December thing that kind of floats, I think that would be helpful to have them.
So at the February board meeting, the board just approved the final calendar for 2025. So I will include that tomorrow when I send out the presentation with all that information.
Perfect.
August is dark, and then the same November, December meeting will be combined. I think it's December 10th or 11th, whatever that second Thursday is.
Okay, that'd be good.
Wednesday, yeah.
Thanks.
And I just wanted to follow up on one thing. Tim talked a lot about our Redefining Mobility Summit, which I know Member Lovejoy has attended. And this committee, we always reach out to you and offer a discounted rate for, pretty nominal fee to get you through the door. So Emily will probably be coordinating that when we get closer to the event.
And yeah, it's really, so just on the Redefining Mobility Summit, there's a couple things. This is our 10th year anniversary. And so we're kind of going big, and we're going to take advantage of the Presto program. So Monday night, we're going to do like a welcome reception. Tuesday, we're having the summit, which will have the 4 panels that I mentioned, but we also do a demonstration zone. So like we invite all kind of latest and greatest technologies for people to interact with. It's all static. You don't get rides. It's all static, but at least you get a sense of like what's out there, what's happening. And then the other cool thing about the Redefining Mobility Summit is we partner with Bay Area Leads. And Bay Area Leads is a STEM, I'll say program provider. And I'm not doing that justice, quite frankly, but they help local schools, high schools, junior highs develop STEM programs and education and curriculum, et cetera. And CCTA, all of the proceeds and revenues from Redefining Mobility Summit go to Bay Area Leads. And so we use those funds to actually fund STEM programs like Femineers program, which is All Girls Robotics Club, All the Girls Lead the Way STEM Day. You know, so anyway, it's a great program. And so we actually, Barrier Leads actually invites all the high schools to the Barrier Redefined Mobility Summit, and we actually do a student showcase of all their projects, so all the robotics, everything. It is absolutely amazing what these students are doing, like just full robotics. I mean, one kid actually designed a whole drone from scratch, you know, and so it's really, really fascinating. But one thing, Chair Carr, I think there was, so Newell right now is no longer the chair. So in February, Chair Arnrich is now moved on to past chair. So in February, we reset the new board. So if I'm not sure if you're aware, but we did lose a significant amount of board membership in this last election. And so right now we have actually 6 new board members. And those 6 new board members are Rita Xavier from West County, Carlin Obringer from Central County, Ron Brunell from Antioch from East County, and then Mark Armstrong from San Ramon, Darlene G. from Orinda, and then Diane Burgess from County Board of Supervisors. And then we have another MTC representative, Candace Anderson, on the board now. So a lot of changes on the board. The new chair, we passed the gavel in the February board meeting, and the new chair is Commissioner and Chair Aaron Meadows from the city of Oakley, and the vice chair is Darlene G. So just as kind of information for all of you.
How is the CCTA board elected?
It's a very good question. So, so the regional transportation planning committees, the 4 subregions, those committees are basically formed as advisory committees to support CCTA. I mean,
Like SWAT?
like SWAT, yeah. So SWAT, Southwest Area Transportation, Committee, and then you got WICTAC, TransPAC, TransPlan. So those 4 RTPCs, Regional Transportation Planning Committees, were essentially formed as part of Measure C. And so basically they are advisory committees to the authority board. And so the way our formation of our board is each RTPC appoints 2 members. So that's 8. And then the County Board of Supervisors appoints 2. And then the Conference of Mayors appoints 1. And that's 11 voting board members. And then there's 3 non-voting board members or ex officio board members, 1 MTC representative, 1 BART representative, and 1 transit operator representative. So that is how the CCTA board is formed. So, and I will say that kind of a fun fact is there's 24 self-help counties, CCTAs in California, and we're the only one that has that governance structure. All the other 23 basically have representation from every single city, and typically in some cases, all of the Board of Supervisors. So like Riverside County Transportation Commission, I think they're like at 36 board members. So, and so yeah, we love the RTPCs. They support the mission of CCTA. It's a great place to kind of more grassroots of what's happening and getting those guys and getting that feedback and getting the information from them, and working and collaborating with them, in terms of implementation of Measure J.
I had no idea that I thought they were formed ad hoc as just a voluntary cooperation thing. I had no idea that they were so structured, that TransPAC and the other.
Yeah, so the RTPCs, each RTPC has representation of every city within that subregion, also a trans operator, and also a county board of supervisor. So like that's the makeup of the RTPCs. That's per their bylaws and per our bylaws. And so so it's all very structured, very governed, in terms of CCTA.
Fun fact, this is the only CCTA committee that actually represents all of 20 jurisdictions.
Thank you, Matt.
I was thinking that while he was saying that about Riverside, I was thinking, well, we've got all of our cities represented here.
Or
Yeah,
they're
when they
appointed.
show up, yeah.
So one thing that would be interesting, I think, for you guys to share with us is how to interact with our city things. So I'm from Moraga. One of our council people was on the board and is no longer because she didn't run. So I was going to find out who in my city was on our board, and I suspect nobody, right, based on what you just said. They'd be part of the SWAT thing or whatever, right? So I think, I used to meet with her, and she would always talk to me about things that were on your board thing. Not that I had that much input, but there would sometimes be things that were interesting to talk about. And I think that kind of dialogue between us and whoever, maybe it's on the sub-board as opposed to the main board, but I think that kind of connection between our city representative and the elected leadership and that group, I think, is probably an important thing to foster. And it sort of happened because she just reached out after I was appointed and says, oh, I want to talk to you. And I thought that was normal and that was good, but I suspect it's not. And I think more of that could go on. If some of you are very connected politically in your city, then maybe you're doing it already. I'm not. But I think that discussion of the topics and what's important from the community back to that leadership and then to you, I think is something to try to foster.
That is a fantastic observation, and I would maybe direct you to maybe not the CCTA board, but I would probably direct you to who is your representative on the RTPC. And because like Moraga is currently not on the authority board, but Moraga, so the formation of the board is very much by rotation, and the La Miranda seat is done by rotation. So, and right now it's Orinda, and then it'll go to Lafayette, and then it'll go to Moraga. So like it's by rotation. So, SWAT, yeah, SWAT. Yeah, Carrie Hillis is the new member, yeah, so. But I think it would be important for you to really stay connected with your city, but then also stay connected with your RTPC representative. And because that's how the structure works, is things kind of start at the RTPC level and then, get filtered up to the board from there, because technically what's supposed to happen is that the two members from the RTPCs, the one advantage, ideally the one advantage is that because we don't have all 19 cities on the board, it's not as parochial as some other boards are, quite frankly. And so by having the RTPCs, the two members of the board are supposed to be very much representing all of the issues and challenges and commitments and issues of that entire subregion, right? So they're supposed to be bringing that to the board from the subregion, from the RTPCs.
That will conclude our regular agenda items, methinks. We don't have any written comments, I assume?
No public comments, no.
None. Anything more that members or staff would like to share? I think we've gotten a good dose of it already, but one last chance before we go ahead and close upon confirmation that we have no correspondence or communications today.
No, none, yeah.
So, always open to new topics. I think a couple may have gotten teased out of what we just discussed and have been duly noted. I think that takes us to adjournment. So we started at 6:03 and are adjourning at 8:21.